All right. So in this video, we're going to come back to our negative externality, and we're going to look at how to correct negative externality using taxes. So we're looking at correcting a negative externality using taxes with and this tax has a special name. This is called a Pigovian tax after Pigou that came up with this idea, or it's also can be sometimes called just a corrective tax in general. Okay, so let's look at what the problem is, and then let's figure out how we can use a tax to solve this problem. Okay, so let's remind ourselves of this problem. So this was our market equilibrium, and our market equilibrium is inefficient. We can just, at our market equilibrium, we have this much of, when we compare it to the efficient one, we want to get to this efficient one. So in this in-between part, we have this much cost. I'm going to outline the cost in red. We have this much cost, but we only in between those two, we only have this much benefit. I need a different color. We only have this much benefit. And so that's why this part here ends up being our deadweight loss, because it's cost that is not offset by some benefit. Okay, it's cost that's not offset by some benefit. So that's the idea that we're trying to deal with here. And so we want to get rid of this. So if we can get rid of this production and push our production back to the efficient part, then this deadweight loss will disappear. We'll get rid of the benefit, and we'll get rid of the cost, and that will. But since the cost is bigger than the benefit right now, that's going to reduce our deadweight loss. Okay, so let's do this. So let's see how we do this with a tax. All right, back to our original situation. Now, the way we do this with a tax is we put a tax which is the same size as the external cost. So we're going to put a corrective, this external cost per unit, we're going to put a tax to be equal to that. So what I mean is we make our tax the same size as that. So now when we put the tax on, remember you put a tax on, you shift up the supply curve for decision-making purposes. So this new dotted line is the supply that equals private marginal cost plus tax, plus this unit tax. Okay, that's equal to this now. So we have shifted up the cost of the firm so that they now have to consider this external cost. They consider it, and once they consider it, now they're going to choose here. Because now they have to pay this extra cost. When you pay this extra cost, they're going to reduce their production. And so, the firm with the tax is going to produce this efficient output. And we're going to get to here. So we're no longer producing this part. This part's not happening anymore. And now we're only considering this part to the left-hand side. So that's the way to solve it. Then this has two effects. One, they reduce the output. And two, which I'll show you on the graph in just a second, the customers and the firm together, remember they both pay the tax, and firm pay for the environmental damage. So it doesn't make the environmental damage go to zero. There's still environmental damage. There's still this negative externality of pollution I think this case was pollution, but the firm now has to pay for it. So they both reduce it. So this reduces the pollution. And they reduce it so they don't do any of this inefficient pollution which is above the benefit, and in addition they pay for the damage that they do cause. Okay, so let's take a look at this. What I want to do here is I want to show the surplus that each of the actors gets in this market. Okay, so first of all, for the consumer, they pay this price. This is the price for the consumer. So this is their consumer surplus. For the producer, they receive this price after the tax. So this is the price for the firm. So this is their their producer surplus. And then finally, this in between part is the tax. Now, one thing you might be curious about, you might wonder, well, where is the externality? Okay, because remember, these are all positives. They get a consumer surplus gets positive, tax is positive, producer surplus is positive, and then there's also this negative effect. So the negative effect can be on top of something else because they're sort of canceling out. So this blue box right here, I'll lightly shade it. Okay, that's the externality. So there still is an externality, but now the tax part, this part, and the externality are exactly the same. And that's what I meant by the customers and the firms pay for the environmental damage. So I'll talk about this a little bit more in the learning unit, and I will also talk about some of the other solutions. One last thing I want to mention, though, before going on, is this will be very unpopular with public in most cases. And that's because the consumers are going to pay more money and the producers are going to receive less money, right? So the producers are going to be mad about this new policy and the consumers are mad about this new policy. It is efficient, it does correct the problem, but it's often difficult to get public support for these corrective taxes, even though they could greatly improve efficiency in cases, at least in cases where the externality can be accurately measured. So anyways, we'll talk about this a little bit more in the learning unit.